Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to episode 82 of the WP Builds podcast. This episode is entitled Properly Supporting Our Wonderful WordPress Community with Dan Maby. This episode was published on Thursday, the 28th of June, 2018. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England, and I'll be joined a little bit later for our top and tail discussion and ending fact by David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com. Before the interview with Dan Maby, we'll be asking the question, what systems are available to get paid? We touch on which platforms you can use in order to receive money via WordPress. And then right at the end, for a couple of minutes, we have our ending fact, which today is entitled Exit Pop-ups Actually Work. Please go to the wpbuilds.com website and click on the buttons underneath the player. You can share the podcast episode. Go and give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That would be most welcome. Also, if you go over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe, you can subscribe to us on any of our channels. The most convenient one I'm finding for everybody these days, and I keep mentioning it, is the Messenger option, because it allows us just to put little pop-ups in your Facebook Messenger feed, and we literally do it to say we've got a new episode out. That's all I've used it for thus far. If you go over to wpbuilds.com/deals, you can find 3 deals at the moment. We've got Toolset, and we've got Main WP, and then we've also got a new one called blocks.party, which is Gutenberg blocks. We've got a tremendous 80% off coupon code there. It's a new platform and it's still being built out, but the guys will be on in a few weeks' time to talk about it. But the deal is live right now, 80% off. That's great. Also, I would like to mention that if you go to wpbuilds.com/webinars, you will find out about a webinar that I'm going to be holding with Sebastian Webb from Microthema in the not too distant future. Microthema is a platform which allows you with a point and click interface to do styling on your website. So it gets rid of problems if you're not familiar with things like CSS or that kind of stuff, and you want a quick and easy way of maintaining your website and making it look pretty and adjusting fonts and spacing and all of that kind of stuff. Microthema can do that for you. And yeah, on Thursday, the 5th of July, so in a week or so, Sebastian and I will be having a webinar where he's going to describe how the platform works. And so far, I think there's about 40 odd people signed up. So if you would like to come along to that, there's probably a little Easter egg in there somewhere. Then, yeah, sure, sign up. Go to that page, which is wpbuilds.com/webinars, and you can get yourself signed up for that. Okay, just to say, today we've got Dan Maby on. Dan is a tremendous asset to the WordPress community. He's deeply involved in running multiple WordPress meetups. He was very heavily involved in the WordCamp in London I went to recently. But he's also got a very interesting and I think quite important initiative called WP and Up, in which he's trying to support the mental health, if you like, of people who do what we do for a living because of its isolating nature. It's really fascinating. I think this guy is incredibly moral, incredibly kind, and he's giving so much of his time away, and it's remarkable, really. So I would highly recommend that you listen to that. But before we get to that good stuff, it's going to be me and David having our discussion. I really hope that you enjoy this week's podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
And this discussion we're calling What Systems Are Available to Get Paid from Clients we're talking about. But Nathan, maybe we should just start on whether we need any systems at all. What's wrong with just sending someone an invoice and asking them to stick something in your bank?
Yeah, do you know, I send out quite a few invoices each month, and the absolute lion's share, the vast majority of my invoices get paid directly into my bank account. And in the UK, we have a system where if you know the 8-digit account number plus a 6-digit sort code, it's called. It's a bit like a SWIFT code, I think it's called internationally. Then you can just send money to anybody you like if you know those numbers. And so at the bottom of all my invoices, it contains that code or those codes. And that's the way that I get paid. I don't know, 95, maybe more % of the time. So no, you don't need all of the online craziness, I don't think. But I know that when I pay people and do it in that way, I do use online banking, but I don't in any way interact with their website to do that. I just, log into the banking. And of course there's cash, but I never get paid in cash for anything ever. It's just not that kind of industry, is it?
Well, my colleague still does it in rural Lincolnshire in the UK. I mean, she still gets forced to meet people in person, and they will come with their rolled up fivers, perhaps a goat to bargain with, maybe some homegrown parsley that they've taken from their garden. It's that kind of interaction they have. So
when I set up my business banking account many years ago, one of the things they gave me was a checkbook as well, which nobody's ever paid me by check, and I'm quite happy by that, because in the UK there is a charge levied, certainly with my bank account, for the processing of checks, but nobody pays me by check anymore. But I do say on the invoices, and you can pay by check to this. Write the recipient name here and post it to me, but not once. Nobody's ever done that.
No, I've not had that, but I did read someone saying that a lot of non-profits still like to pay by checks.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's easy to keep track of, isn't it? And you've also, with the check, you've got the stub, and so there's no difficulty keeping track of what you've done. But it feels to me like a different era, and it feels to me like the checkbook is dying very rapidly.
Yeah, I think so. And also standing orders. I mean, one reason to have a system, I guess, is for the reoccurring payments or other memberships or care or hosting that we might take care of. But I mean, I never hear anyone using standing orders.
I have a few standing orders, but they're not anything coming towards me. They're always things that I set up to go elsewhere. Okay. I guess a standing order could be defined as something that you set up within your banking system to do something on a regular basis. So I've got a standing order to pay such and such to such and such, and you tell it each month, and it just ticks over, doesn't it? That's what I think it is anyway. But I never have them set up to pay, because I don't have any control over that, if you know what I mean. I just would have to go through the list of my banking account each month and find, did it get paid this month? Did it get paid this month? And if it did, right, normal service. If it didn't, okay, now we need to do something. So I never do that.
Yeah, that's right. If you ask the client to set up a standing order to pay your care, they can cancel it any time without you knowing. So yeah, I think that's
the good thing about that was it was probably the beginnings of sort of automating things, and it probably worked really well, but it feels like banking has moved on since then. And in the UK we have something, and I don't know if this is the case in other places, we have something called direct debit. And direct debit can be set up. It's very similar to standing order in that you can charge somebody on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis. And then it happens on a regular basis. So, you charge somebody per month. But there's a lot of law surrounding that and when it can be used and when it can't be used. But the nice thing from a vendor's point of view is that if you've got them to agree to a direct debit, you can also increase the amount of the direct debit on your end or decrease it or whatever, or take one-off payments. So let's say I had a care plan at £50 a month, and I decided to put that up to £60 a month. I could do that, and they wouldn't have to interact. Now, presumably, you'd go out and get all the permissions from the client. Is it okay if you do this? But you can then do it on your end, is my understanding. I've never done it, so I don't really know, but that's what I think you can do.
Well, you might as well talk about your solution, go cardless.
Yeah, we in the UK and now in Australia, as I said on the news a few weeks ago, we have you go to gocardless.com, and it takes about 5 minutes to set up an account. You prove who you are, and then you can have this relationship with clients, and you can set up a plan. So, for example, you could say, okay, I want to have a website care plan, and I want it to be billed every month on this date. And then it creates a URL with a little bit of your branding on it. and you send that to the client, and then you see in your dashboard how many clients are on what plan. They send you a weekly or a monthly email, I can't remember, saying how much you've received through their system. And because it's super automated, it's the fees are very, very low. I don't remember exactly what they are, but I think no matter how large the transaction is, there's a cap of £2. I think that's right. And thereafter, I think it's 1.4% or something. So it's very, very affordable. Especially if you're doing, large transactions on a regular basis. I think it's probably the cheapest way of doing it automatically. But I don't know if this system exists in North America, but I know it does in Australia. But yes. I think it's Europe-wide, but I'm not sure.
And well, I was really taken with it. And there is a plugin that works with WooCommerce, and I try to
I didn't know
do
that.
it. And yeah, there is. And I thought, well, I can use this in my shopping cart as an option for care plans. And the first person I tried it on said no, because I think they said they just don't do direct debits. And I think the problem is that with a direct debit, the person taking the money out can change the times when they take that money out.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's probably why they held. But I believe when I looked at it, actually, Nathan, because it was your recommendation, and I thought it was cool. It was 1%. I know there's
1%, is it? Yeah. Could be. It is very cheap. No matter what I've ever looked at subsequently, whether it's Stripe or PayPal, which we'll get onto, I've never had anything beat Go Cardless for fees. So that's what I send. If somebody signs up for something and it's a subscription with me, I always send a Go Cardless direct debit mandate. You just copy and paste the URL, and I've never had any kickback ever. Not one person has refused to do it. So yeah, I've had a different experience, but I could see why, because it's there's a certain level of trust there. If you can change the dates and change the amounts, then you have to be honourable with that. But I don't know if in Go Cardless whether you can change the dates and change the amounts. I'm not sure if you can. I've never actually tried to do it because nothing's ever changed. I might have a quick look at that whilst you introduce the next bit.
Yeah. Well, I was looking, how different people paid, and they seem to. How they got clients to pay was through different sort of packages. So some would be using their accountancy packages. So there was like QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Wave apps. All of these were accountancy packages for small businesses, and they would also charge clients. So there was those people. And then there were the people with the project management tools as well. So things like Get Proposal, Harvest. And there's another one, which I don't know if it's any good, but it's from Fiverr, and it's free, and it's called And Co. So it's at www.and.co, and it does invoicing, contract proposals, expense tracking, time tracking, and task management, and all of this for free.
What does free mean? Do we mean free as in free to use? Presumably they layer on, because I know with things like Stripe, you can layer on top your own fee, can't you? So you can have Stripe's fee plus 1% extra on top, which might go to And Co. Do you know if that's how they do that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably just I only found it the other day because someone mentioned it, so I haven't checked it out. But that seemed quite interesting.
Yeah. So moving on then to just to go back to that. I don't use any of those accountancy bits of software like Xero or whatever you just mentioned. I just keep everything in my business bank account, and then at the end of the year, I get my accountant to just sort of deal with everything on my behalf. But I suppose if you're a team and there was lots of you, it might be a really, really useful way of handling your accounts, just to have it all in one big platform.
See, I'm happy with the way that I've gone now, thinking about it, which is to basically build everything as a shop where people have to go and purchase online those products individually, including the reoccurring ones. So the WooCommerce is what I'm using. I guess easy digital downloads would have worked for me just as well. But I see the benefits of it now because of the fact that if I do want the accountancy packages afterwards, I can still connect them via WooCommerce.
With the WooCommerce solution that you've got so everything is like a shop, basically, how much of that is available on the free WooCommerce tier, and how much of it do you need to buy additional plugins for?
Yeah. Well, the subscription is the is the main one I need to buy. I do have a bookings plugin as well, which I can't remember, some WP appointments or something like. I can't remember what it's called, but that's WooCommerce appointments, and those two things on my shop are needed. They're the only expensive items. The rest of the stuff is free.
Right.
Stripe is free as well, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you use the free WooCommerce and then add a couple of premium add-ons on top, but it's not enough to sort of blink too much at. Yeah, that's it. Do you use the WooCommerce official ones, or do you go to sort of third-party vendors?
Yeah, well, the subscription I'm using their official one with the bookings plugin. I started. Well, I didn't buy it actually off them. I just tried the GPL version of it to test it out, and it never did what I needed it to do. So I ended up buying one. I wish I remember the name of it now, but I'm sure it's called WP WooCommerce Appointments, which has been fantastic, and
it works perfectly. No problem. Yeah. Do you ever have any sort of reservations about having WooCommerce and all of its interesting stuff, shall we say, running your entire online business? Does that trouble you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we had an episode, didn't we, where I was spitting feathers about WooCommerce. But actually, I think it's fine. I mean, what I try and do is avoid with this doing any major modifications that aren't covered by plugins. So I think updates will be largely okay.
Yep.
They have been so far.
Yep.
But I feel it's the only option for me to do things if I want everyone to prepay.
Yeah.
And have all of that potential add-ons that I can add on to change my business over time.
Do you have it integrated in such a way that once the payments have been taken, further automated things happen? Or do you just look in the WooCommerce dashboard, if you like, to see that people have paid and then, make their account active? Or if you notice that a subscription is cancelled, you have to manually go and do deletion of accounts and things like that?
Yeah, well, I'm still working a lot of it out because this is really just over the first year. So a lot of these are renewals since I changed to hosting and care. And initially I set them up as one-off products for the year. So they didn't renew as such. They had to come back and do it. So I'm in new territory at the moment on a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, the emails come in to tell me what's happened on all these things. If someone's been charged again, it'll tell me about that from the system.
Yep.
So,
and you've never had any hiccups where it's gone wrong, particularly?
Well, apart from me, again, I set it up with people and I set them up as 1 year products rather than recurring. I wrongly set it up, so I've had to change everybody's account. So I'm still waiting to see if this is going to run well. So in about a year's time, I shall know because enough people that pass through, because I'm doing yearly rather than monthly.
Yep. The conversation that we had a little while ago touches on this. That is to say, a few minutes ago before we started recording, about what does it mean when you do recurring? With my Go Cardless direct debit, I know what that means. It means that their system is going to suck a certain amount of money out of their account. They agree to that. I know that things like Stripe and PayPal do all of this, but particularly with Stripe, I never know what that means. So, for example, if I go to your website and I choose the credit card button and you use Stripe, how do I interact with that? How do I go and cancel it? How do I update my credit card information and all of that?
Yeah, this is something I don't know. I mean, I know through WooCommerce, but what I did discover, and I didn't even realize this till recently, is that the client can't go in and cancel it. They can, because of the way I've set it up, upgrade or downgrade. They can't actually cancel, but they could effectively remove their card from their account because it's through WooCommerce and stop it that way.
Right.
But I don't suppose they'll be able to do that if they use something like WP Simple Pay. It doesn't have that kind of account system for them.
So let's say you use WP Simple Pay, which is a WordPress plugin to put a widget, like it says Simple Pay widget, and you can set up subscription with it. How do you go and cancel it? Do you have to go into your bank account and phone them up and say anything with this from this company from this moment on is to be disallowed? I've never understood that. I just don't get how that works because I'm thick and have never had to use it, probably. But that sort of stuff troubles me. I think that's why, apart from the cost of using Go Cardless, I think that attracted me because I understood that everybody in the UK who has access to any kind of banking can go in and everybody's bank account has the option to cancel direct debits.
Yes.
So it's trivially easy to do it without any third-party infrastructure. But maybe somebody could reach out and explain how that all works.
Yeah. Whether I assume Stripe do some communication through their system, but
yes.
And in terms of WooCommerce, I mean, that's set up my end. It's up to me to let them know in advance that that they're going to get charged again, which is what I'm doing and still tweaking. But I think there's no problem if you warn people that their money's coming out, particularly if it's a yearly thing. You know?
And WooCommerce will do that. Send them an email before time, will it?
No. Again, it's another premium plugin that needs to come in. So I'm testing some out. Yeah. So it does get a bit pricey.
Right. Yeah, I bet it does. I mean, there's all sorts of bolt-on services. I mean, Stripe came along, I don't know, 8 years ago or something now, so quite a decent amount of time, and kind of shook things up a bit, because it seems to me now wherever you go, the two options, if there's a SaaS product which is integrating with payments, the two options which they always have are Stripe and PayPal. And then occasionally you'll see something like PayPal's Braintree, which is a bit like Stripe, but made by PayPal. I don't think it was initially made by PayPal, but bought by PayPal. And so there's a lot of add-on services. For example, I have a SaaS app called Thrivecart, which enables you to create sort of shopping carts and things, and you put in your Stripe API details and your PayPal API keys, and don't even remember what they're called, but it's not as simple as your PayPal email address. And it just takes care of all that stuff. And in a way, you hope that their infrastructure has been built well enough that it'll, handle the cancellation of things. But because I'm not doing a lot of that stuff, I've never really explored it.
No, I was interested. I mean, that was one I was looking into to try and avoid WooCommerce. And the one thing that it didn't have, but I think it may come, is there was no ability to up and downgrade through its subscriptions, which I needed to allow people to go from package to the other package within a year.
Yep.
But again, the same. I mean, I guess this is true also for Samcart, which is, the main competitor, isn't it, to Thrivecart? It's a third-party SaaS app, and I don't know how clients can cancel their subscriptions with those.
Yeah, I mean, it's fraught with difficulty, isn't it? Because obviously, you really, if you're going to launch a product where you're taking money, you really would like to know thoroughly and completely. That would really worry me. That I didn't fully understand how my clients could go and cancel and go and upgrade and go and downgrade, all of the stuff associated with that. But the truth is, people don't usually make use of those features, do they? They sign up and that's kind of it. That's just how it goes. And then occasionally you'll get somebody phoning you up and saying, can I cancel this or what have you? And then, of course, we've got the moral dilemma of what do you do if somebody is on a subscription and you sort of have the impression that they no longer need it anymore but are still paying? Do you contact them and say, look, you don't seem to have made use of this in a year. Should we just cancel this? Or do you work on the basis that, well, that what you got into when you were signing up for it, because you haven't made use of it, you're just going to have to lump the payments that you've used and not made use of?
Yeah. Sorry, Nathan, you just went and disappeared for a moment.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just saying about the fact that sometimes people might subscribe to something and then not use it, and they don't know that they've not made use of it. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, these our models. I mean, we like subscriptions because that is what people do. It's why it's a great business model, isn't it?
Well, I signed up for something a little while ago. I'll tell you a tiny little story. Signed up for something off a website, and I got a deal for 6 months. And somewhere in the small print of that deal was the fact that after 6 months, I'd go onto a full plan. Stupid me. I didn't spot it. And I paid $40 a month to this company for over a year. And so I contacted them and said, look, I've made no use of this. I would like to have my money back. And, they quite rightly said, no, you can't, but we'll cancel it for you. And I didn't fight, because I just thought it's my fault. I got the emails. I should have read the documentation more carefully, but it did annoy me a bit at the time. So
I know that, and I feel the annoyance, and I love companies who have been no quibble with their money back. And I must admit, taken a leaf on that. So I think if I knew someone was overpaying me and I had a relationship with them, I think I would want to point out that they were paying too much just to build those bonds. But of course, I wouldn't do that if it was someone who really, it's about the relationships, isn't it? That's what I would ideally have. But if they were paying for something just because they, didn't check, what they were paying for.
Well, also some people might just have a dormant account for something, for a long time. Let's say, for example, I use ActiveCampaign, but I really, really underuse it. But I'm happy to pay them the money because I'm always thinking I'm on the basic plan. I don't know what it is. It's hardly anything. It's like $6 a month or something. And I'm happy to pay them that, even though I never send an email out with it, just because at some point I have gathered a few names in there, and I'm thinking maybe I'll make use of that account one day because of all of its whiz-bang features. So I just keep paying it. And so if they had that process of contacting me and saying, you're not using this, actually I'd turn around and say, I'm just not using it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard to know, we're not all the same. And no use doesn't mean never going to be used.
No, I'm quite interested. I'd love to get feedback on this. There was one other type of payment, particularly with hosting, is the WHMCS system that you can get with your reseller on hosting accounts.
Yep.
And that takes care of all of the sign-ups and billing, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can get an add-on for Plesk, which is what I would do, but I've never done it. I've just always set up Go Cardless or taken, I send out manual invoices with the system that I have that integrates with Stripe. And it's always worked fine. There's a charge for using that system with Plesk, and it's another license I'd have to have, and really it's not worth me having. But I think that's a great idea if you're selling hosting and that's available on your platform. Yeah.
I just think for anyone new coming into this, I think it's quite tricky with there's so many options, doing it through the accountancy packages, through the project management tool, through the hosting itself. For those,
just cash or bank account. Yeah, there's loads. The way I would always offer for people, if somebody asked me for advice on this, I would say if you're based in the UK and it's subscriptions, use Go Cardless. And then for anything else, I think the options have always got to be present your bank account details. Be prepared to take checks, although I think that's dying out, and then look for services which offer Stripe and PayPal, because PayPal, not because it's particularly great to work with, but just because everybody's got it, and Stripe because it is great to work with and it's dead easy.
Yeah, and you know what? That's great advice. I think the PayPal one's interesting. A lot of people want to drop PayPal because it can be a bit of a pain if you're the person providing that service, and everybody likes to use it if you've got a PayPal account, including me. And I wonder, when it comes to clients, do you think you would lose business because you didn't offer that option? I doubt it.
Well, as I was saying to you before this call, I've sent out thousands of invoices. Only one client in my business has ever paid me through either Stripe or PayPal. And they flip between Stripe or PayPal. I think they randomly pick a button. Everybody else just pays me into my bank account because I think they've got an accountancy manager. The accountancy manager gets an email copy of the invoice. They're probably permanently logged on to their accountancy software or bank or online banking, and it's so easy to create a list of people who you regularly pay, and then you just type in, okay, this time pay them £28 or £250 and click go. Are you sure? Yes, it's gone. It's just done.
Yeah.
I think you probably, if you're new, set up Stripe and PayPal. Definitely don't leave any money on the table. But for me, it's not. I wouldn't lose anything probably, but I know a lot of people that would. There you go.
Yeah. No, I'm only asking because I haven't set up PayPal. I haven't given that option to people.
I wouldn't worry too much, but yeah. Okay, shall we knock it on the head and head over to the interview? Well, welcome. You made it this far into the WP Builds podcast. We're at the interview part, and today, all the way from, well, I'm going to say the southeast. I'm not exactly sure where Dan Maby lives, but we've got Dan Maby. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Where are you at the moment?
Where at the moment I'm in Essex, Colchester.
Okay. Oh, Colchester. I've been to Colchester. Have they got a fabulous museum in the middle of Colchester?
We have, yes.
Yeah,
I've literally just come back from a meeting there, actually.
Have you?
I have, yes.
I'm a bit of a history fan, actually. When I'm not doing podcasts, I'm reading about history, and I love that part of the world.
Oh.
You know, Suffolk and Sutton Hoo and all that. Anyway, I digress. We're here to talk about WordPress
Yes.
and things like that. But Dan is somebody that I came in contact with fairly recently and then met even more recently, because Dan is a very significant player in the WordCamp in London. Do you want to just tell us specifically about that event, what your role was in this year's 2018 event?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think significant is probably overplaying a little bit. There was a really great, awesome team around WordCamp London this year. And I was honoured to be able to be part of that in my little way. I was actually supporting the speakers on the day, and supporting the speakers team in the background. So there was an awful lot going on. Certainly from my perspective, it was a thoroughly enjoyable event. But it was I'd say a real honour to actually to be involved and be part of that event.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk today about that honour and that privilege, if you like, because we're going to talk about the events, the things that go along outside of WordPress code and plugins and themes, because we're going to spend a lot of the time talking about real world events and meeting up with people and actually speaking face to face with people. And I guess you could sum it up in one word. It would be the community. Now, Dan is very heavily involved in the community. Do you want to just list off, and we can talk about them in more depth? Do you want to just tell us about the meetups that you're a part of? Because there's quite a few.
Sure. The number of the list is growing a little bit. So I'm involved with WordPress. WordPress London, the WordPress London meetup, the WordPress Suffolk meetup, the WordPress Essex meetup, and the WordPress Liverpool meetup.
Yes,
which has literally just been launched in the last few days.
Let's start from the basis that you've come to this podcast and you don't know what a WordPress meetup is. Do you want to just indicate how we would find out about an event happening in our local area, whether in the United States or Australia or the UK? How do we find out about our local events?
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of places that you can head to find details. A really great place to start is Meetup itself, meetup.com. You'll find there a long list of not just WordPress meetups, but a lot of events going on globally. But the platform allows you to obviously drill down to your interests, your location, and you will find, as I say, quite a list. Or hopefully, you will find quite a list of local meetups and events that are relevant to you. And actually, getting involved on meetup.com, having discussions with community members online, often you'll find will open up doors to other places where you can find out about events that are going on.
Yeah,
you've got many kind of online communities. There's certainly in the UK, we've got the WP UK Slack team. There's an awful lot going on. I think about 800 members in there at the moment. That was born out of organisers of local events, local WordPress events, and has grown and evolved into a really great community that's discussing everything from events through to development workflows or even just general life. Just having a bit of a chit chat, really.
What's the difference then between a WordCamp and a WordPress meetup? How would we know what we were getting ourselves into?
Yeah, sure. So WordCamps, if people aren't familiar with, are the official, I'm not keen on the word, but it's essentially a conference around WordPress. They are supported by the WordPress Foundation. They are, as I say, an official event. So they carry the WordPress logo, WordPress name, the WordCamp name. Whereas a meetup can be slightly outside of that more official program, if you like. Anybody can essentially start up a meetup, and it's just about bringing together a community of people.
Is there some, when you said that it carries the official logo if you're at a WordCamp as opposed to a meetup, do the WordPress Foundation in any way contribute, I don't know what the word is here, resources, let's use that. Do they contribute resources to the WordCamps?
Yes, they do. There's a network of community members, the global community team, that will support, mentor, and really provide guidance to those that are organising a WordCamp. In terms of kind of funding a WordCamp, they are predominantly supported by sponsors. The tickets are offered often at a very, very low cost to the attendee, and the idea obviously there is to be able to make the event accessible and available to all. There really is a very, very strong theme of inclusiveness within WordCamps to encourage the community to be able to access them.
So WordCamps tend to be, well, my experience is they tend to be an annual event, whereas a WordPress meetup, the ones that you're involved in, how often do they typically go on?
Sure. So it really varies a bit, to be honest, with meetups. We, at the moment, so London, if I take London, for example, we run monthly.
Okay.
We run the last Thursday of every month and have done for many years now. But there are other meetups. I think a good example is the WordPress Cambridge meetup, for example. They run different styles of events at different points in the month. So there's no kind of fixed, this is how it's to be done. But there are definitely, if you like, guidelines and support in terms of good practices, best practices, really. But it's really about ensuring that the community is receiving what the community requires rather than having a very rigid, this is exactly how it's to be done.
So if you were to go to a WordCamp, you obviously, you've got rows of chairs sat and there's usually a speaker, and then there's after the events are finished for the day, there's some sort of entertainment provided and so on. Is that the same at meetups? Is it kind of like sitting in a room listening to somebody talk, or is there time to, have a coffee and natter basically with people as well?
Yeah, sure. So again, there's variance on what's being offered. With London, we have a slightly more structured approach to it. So we meet about 6:30 for the first half an hour or so. There's a lot of socialising, networking. We've got some food and drink going on for the attendees. Then about 7-ish, we'll actually kick off with more kind of formal sit down, and we'll have some talks given by the community. That will then be followed by a slightly more social element at a local bar. Whereas if I look at the WordPress Essex meetup, for example, we've just had an event where we essentially spent the entire night as a roundtable discussion. There was just a lot of really good discussion about plugins, and although we'd actually had a plan, a structure set out for the night. We were very fluid with the events, and it, as I say, it led on to this really great discussion that went on for best part of 3 hours.
And it is safe to say that you're hooked on these things, aren't you? Being involved in what was it again? Essex, Suffolk, London, Liverpool.
That's right, yes.
What is it that got you into it then?
It was actually WordCamp London that really kicked it off for me. I think it was 2013 was the first one I attended as an attendee, and just realised how incredible the community was. It was my very first time at any kind of WordPress. In fact, the WordPress London meetup was the very first time I'd attended any kind of event like this, and I think it was actually that very first event I stuck my hand up saying, look, I'll happily get involved in any way I can. And many years later, here I am. We've just launched our 4th meetup, and we've got our 5th and 6th in the pipeline at the moment. So we're really doing a lot of work at the moment to try and support the community in any way that we possibly can.
How do you go about kind of organising who's going to be up on stage? Let's take the monthly London event. How much work do you? I say you. How much work does the community, for want of a better word, put into all of that? Like, I'm thinking, you just mentioned that there was food, like that was going to all take care of itself. Presumably somebody has to buy the food and bill for the food and organise it and make sure that there's vegetarian options and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Tell us what's involved in a 2 or 3 or 4 hour event.
Yeah, sure. there's quite a bit that goes into it. We're very fortunate with London in that we've been doing it for many years now. That we've developed this a fairly replicable routine within it. So we've actually just moved venues recently, but we'd spent 3.5 years, or a little over 3.5 years at City University. So finding a venue and developing a long-term relationship with a venue just removes so many headaches.
Yep.
For meetup organisers, and it's one thing that I highly recommend anybody out there that's thinking of launching a meetup. Really look at the venue and really try and find somebody, strategically partner yourself with a venue that you know you can have longevity with, because it gives the attendees consistency, and it removes a big headache on your part. So I mean, often universities are a really good option to look for.
Right.
But in terms of the organising on the night, as I say, we've got the venue in place. So we're looking for speakers, and speakers for London are our biggest focus. That's where a lot of our work goes into. The other events are smaller than London, so we tend to run more kind of workshopy type sessions where we try and get the attendees more becoming part of the night as opposed to just simply giving a talk.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it depends on the event and the style of event and the people who are in attendance, because obviously WordPress is a very wide attracts a very wide and broad audience. So we can have obviously very, very heavy, very skilled developers. We can also have content writers. We can also have designers, business owners, or users of, say, WordPress.com, as opposed to the open source solutions. So trying to create content for that very wide audience can be a bit tricky sometimes.
Do you find that the people who end up speaking at these events, do you find that after a period of time they find you, or do you still spend quite a lot of time going out and reaching out and writing emails and corresponding, trying to get people lined up for the next 12 months or so?
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely work goes into trying to find speakers. We certainly use social media as a really great tool to reach out to people. We're fortunate in that London attracts quite a number of speakers ourselves, so that's a really great. We're very thankful that we're in that position, because it does mean that we're able to have conversations with the people about potentially going alternative locations as well. So we've had speakers that have come, that have travelled down to London and have also travelled out to Essex. We've got some speakers lined up for Liverpool who actually aren't Liverpool based. So we're very, very fortunate that been developing this kind of network of events means that we're able to kind of spread and lighten the load a little bit in terms of finding speakers.
Right, I get it. And when you put on these events, I mean, they're not free. The event costs something. Presumably the food costs something. And I don't know if you pay the speakers in any way or reimburse them for travel or anything like that. But where does the money come from? Do you offer sponsorships, or is there a fee on the door or any of that?
Yeah, sure. So the meetups themselves are free to attendees. Again, a big focus for us is inclusiveness. So charging a fee, it becomes a barrier to entry to these events. So we ensure that for the attendees, they're offered for free. And catering costs, venue costs, all those things are covered by sponsors. And certainly London, we've been very, very fortunate to have some long-term sponsors that have supported us. We've had both SiteGround and WP Engine on board for, I think we're into our 4th or possibly even 5th year in terms of a working relationship with them. So we're very fortunate in that respect. Part of the work that I'm doing at the moment is launching a charity called WP Up, and a big focus for us there is to be able to have a sponsorship package that enables us to fund all of these events. So sponsors effectively are sponsoring WP Up. WP Up is then providing these events throughout the country.
Oh, I see. So it sort of aggregates that difficulty.
Yes,
You could approach WP and up, which we'll get onto in a minute, actually. But yeah, you approach you, and you could say, okay, well, we've got a few sponsors that are, more than happy to sort of sponsor your event or this event. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's a really good, because I would imagine if I was to put on something like that where I live, there would be, because the population is so thin and spread out, and where I live is right next to the coast, so half of the compass is the ocean, if you know what I mean. It's hard. Things like that would genuinely be difficult. Having somebody like you, is that a unique idea? Did you set this WP and up?
Yes, yeah. So WP and Up is something that we are in the process of developing at the moment. We've put in an application for registered charitable status. Because there's a couple of things you've got going on here. The WordPress Foundation offers what's called the chapter program for WordPress meetups, and they become effectively official meetups owned and run by the WordPress Foundation, but again, effectively the community is actually running those events, so the people on the ground. Unfortunately, we were in a position where it because of the costs associated with London, we were unable to make that event a chapter program because the costs were too high to cover our venue costs for the foundation program. So we had to look for alternative ways to do it, and sponsorship was obviously the way that we were able to provide the event. So WP and Up is. We are not wanting in any way, shape or form to discourage from the chapter program that is provided by the foundation. We want to actually, or in fact we are supporting chapter meetups as we speak. There are people that we're providing support to in terms of trying to find speakers, in terms of trying to find venues that are under the chapter program. So we are just wanting to ensure that this isn't being seen as something that's trying to compete in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
With the chapter program, because it is a very positive a program that's available. You may have noticed events in the dashboard.
Carry on.
You may have noticed the WordPress meetups in the dashboard of your WordPress admin.
Yes, of course.
Those are chapter programs. Those are chapter events. So unfortunately, the London event doesn't display in the dashboard because it's not a foundation event.
Right. So good to get that clear, isn't it? It's not because of any sort of falling out or anything. It's simply it just didn't work out for you, but it's all about WordPress in the end. If I was to be a sponsor, because I imagine quite a few people listening to this podcast are working in companies, and maybe that's the kind of thing that would appeal to them, to get their name out. How does the sponsorship work, in the sense that what do they get? What's the, apart from the flip side of being an attendee, what does a sponsor get? Are they allowed to wander around and talk to people? Do they get a banner, or what do they get?
Yeah, sure. We've got a fixed sponsorship package that we've been offering for WordPress London. We are in the process of changing this sponsorship package as moving over to the kind of more almost like a global sponsorship package through WP and Up. But at the moment and going forward, sponsors receive coverage at the event. They've got the ability to put up banners, bring along swag, and have people in attendance, their staff in attendance. We actually offer the ability for sponsors to have a couple of minutes at the start of every event, just to introduce themselves. We try to ensure that we're not just simply creating an event to offer a sales platform,
right?
Because nobody really wins in that position. The attendees don't want that. I know I've been to events where I get put off by this kind of very hard sales type focus of an event. So there's definitely a bit of a balance that we have to find, and I think we've found that through London in the way that the sponsors engage with the community. If the sponsors are the community as well, they actually are in attendance. They speak at the events. So there's lots of coverage that they get. We also they're included in our emails that go out to our membership. So for London, there's about 2,500 members there. So they do get quite a bit of coverage in and around the community as well.
And obviously, as an attendee, it's pretty obvious what you get. You show up and you get to enjoy whatever the diet is that week. You get a bit of food and what have you. What's compelled you to get involved with so many? What do you get out of it? What's your take from being involved in organising so many?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, it all started because at the time I wasn't particularly writing a lot of code. I couldn't really figure out how to contribute back to the community. I just knew I wanted to in some way, but I didn't really know how to. And WordPress has moved on leaps and bounds over the years in terms of ways that people can now contribute, even if they're not writing code, which is phenomenal. So for me, developing the events and building community and just generally trying to make a bit more noise about what's available and how great and how awesome the community really is, really was a way for me to be able to contribute back.
It's the community is so much more than just like when you think about WordPress, you do think about websites, don't you? And you think about the code and all that kind of stuff. And just having been to a few little events, you realise it's way more, isn't it? You've got the documentation team and the translation team and all of these kind of things. And I know that they're at the Word camps, but I confess I've never been to a WordPress meetup, so the idea of it is genuinely fascinating to me. I just like the idea of touching base with some familiar faces periodically.
Yeah,
and presumably there's quite a little bit of camaraderie that develops over time.
Oh yes, yeah, no, there absolutely is, and this is what I love about these events. There is definitely a kind of a returning community that we see month in, month out, but we also see new faces every single month as well, and those new faces become familiar faces over time. It's a really great way to see and interact with the community. I mean, I will never forget. So there was one individual that walked up to me and said, "Dan, I always know when it's time for WPLDM because I need to have a shave." It's the only time he ever has a shave is when he comes to the event.
If I was to decide to set up an event, we've sort of briefly touched on this, and we've talked about like the machinations of what you might need to do. What would you advise is the best way to go about, deciding whether it's worthwhile having one where you live? So, as an example, if I live in London, presumably it's a bit silly setting up another one, or maybe it isn't. I don't know. Is there any advice you'd give about whether or not it's worthwhile in the area that you live?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even in London, it's definitely worthwhile. If you have a desire and your desire isn't being fulfilled for whatever reason, then go ahead and do it. If you've got, even if you find it initially, it's just yourself and one other sitting in a coffee shop somewhere, just chatting for an hour about stuff that you enjoy doing, it's beneficial. It's beneficial on both parts. Both parties. If you've got somebody that has the desire to bring something to the community, then I would strongly encourage just simply doing it. Just if you know of anybody else in your local area, ping them on Twitter or drop them a message via Facebook, or send them an email if you happen to have their email address, and just say, look, thinking about this, what do you think? Do you want to meet up, have a coffee? And just go from there, because it really is. There's no fixed. You have to have this fancy website, or you have to have these incredible speakers, or you have to have catering. It's the idea of a meetup is literally you just meet up, actually just bring people together.
Did you sort of aspire over time though to make it into something a little bit more? Because I know that you've got a lot of nice equipment, you've got nice cameras and audio stuff, and you video it and all of that kind of stuff. Is that? I guess what you're saying is you don't need any of those traps.
No,
but do you find the more traditional the meetup becomes, the more popular it becomes, or is there no correlation at all?
I think there's definitely I think consistency is the key here. It's actually being consistent in what you're doing. find a consistent date, find a consistent venue, ensure you stick with a consistent time, and in time create a bit of structure for it. But again, that's not a high priority when you're initially starting. There's definitely for me the London events where we've got the cameras. I mean, Leo from Sotic, those guys, again, it's all voluntary. What these people are doing. He comes along every month. He brings his camera equipment. He sets up and live streams for us. That I've tried to encourage over time because I wanted to be able to bring the event to a wider audience, and that live streaming for me was an obvious way to do that. So again, it's yes. When we started out, it wasn't ever on the cards. It was never even a thought. We were recording the talks. Graham Armfield used to record the talks for many years, but it was never something we were kind of intentionally moving towards. It was a case of a bit of a light bulb moment here. Actually, let's offer this out and see if people consume it. See if people actually want it.
Do people do that then? Do you find there's an engagement after the fact if you have live streamed something? Do you have an engagement from an audience who don't show up? So rather than it being like a London meetup, it actually ends up being, there's a bunch of people in the room on this particular moment, and then as the days go on, you get people all over the world or all over the area sort of chiming in about what they've watched.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
We do. We've for quite some time now we've just been streaming into our closed Facebook group. The reason for doing that is we wanted to ensure what we were doing was actually of a quality that would be suitable for a wider audience.
Yep.
So it was counterintuitive because we were trying to push out some content to a wider audience, but we were sticking it in a closed Facebook group. But it allowed us to test a few things. We had a few teething issues in the early stages, and we've now got to a point. In fact, last month was the first month we streamed. We did a simulcast. I think we did YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook simultaneously last month, which was a whole interesting set of challenges. But as I say, Leo did an incredible job pulling all that off for us.
Yeah, you need a nerd in the crowd, don't you, if you're going to do that? But it doesn't have to be that. It can be very low tech, just meeting up in the pub and nattering.
Absolutely. I think one thing I would suggest, you mentioned the pub there, I would suggest not meeting in a pub. Just purely because, again, it can be a barrier to entry, meeting in a pub.
Yeah.
We've actually got a potential speaker lined up who is of 12 years of age. Now, unfortunately, if we were in a pub, we would potentially have some challenges there.
Wow.
But there's also issues with religion, for example, around alcohol.
Yeah.
So universities are a really good option to look at. But if you're at smaller scale, coffee shops tend to be a really good place to start.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Now,
just the beauty of universities is they're obviously accessible. They tend to have the AV equipment in place, projectors, and so on. If you're going down that route.
Yeah, good point. Just as an aside, because we're framing this on a WordPress podcast and we've been talking about WordPress, excuse me, do you find yourself always talking about WordPress, or does it go off into other just internet related things, or is it simply WordPress? Have you got any other cross pollination between other open source projects, or is it just WordPress?
Yeah, sure. Actually, at the events, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, no, definitely. We surveyed the group. I mean, we're going back quite some time now, but we surveyed the group and we were very pleasantly surprised about the split. We asked whether individuals were developers, designers, business owners, or users, and the split was very, very close to a 25% within each category.
Huh.
So we realised we needed to obviously ensure we were providing content that was relevant across the board. The vast majority of people in the room tend to be self-employed, so business talks and discussion around how to run a business, and some of the things associated with running a business are often subjects that we'll cover. And we do try and encourage more kind of wider discussional stuff when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I was just thinking about in where I am, because the population is so thin. I'm just thinking if I started something like this, I wonder if it'd be a good idea to make it an open source event, so it had Drupal people and WordPress people and whatever, kind of people.
Yeah, again, a great idea, and certainly encourage that kind of cross-pollination. The only thing to be aware of with that is, again, you've got this WordPress is you've got quite a wide audience to satisfy within WordPress already. So to then bring in Drupal, Joomla, PHP generally. There's definitely some real positives in that, and that kind of cross pollination is great. But there's also that just kind of being aware of satisfying the very wide audience.
Yeah. Well, it's food for thought, isn't it? But there you go. Yeah, I'm just on the WP and Up website, which I have to say at the moment, if you get there when this podcast comes out, I don't know if it'll be like fully on the go, but at the moment we're on the sort of holding page.
Yes.
And you talk. There's not a lot of text on there, but the text that there is mentions supporting the WordPress community through our 4 health hubs, and then it goes on to talk about code health, business health, physical health, mental health. Why? What's the angle there about health?
Sure. So going back for me, as I say, back in the early days with London, I really wanted to contribute to the community in some way, and running these events was an obvious way for me, because it meant that I was actively being part of the community. Over the years, I've been self-employed in one form or another for, I think, about 21 years now, and over the years, I've run businesses where I've employed large groups of people. I've run businesses where I've just been myself. And in recent years, I've spent some time where it has just been myself. And there have been some challenges from a mental health perspective with the isolation that has caused. So WP and Up is something that has been on my heart to bring to the community for quite some time now. If you actually look back at the Twitter account, you'll see that the first tweet was back in, I think, January 2014.
Oh, okay.
So it's something it's been in the background for a very long time, and I really wanted to bring something that would support the community from a mental health perspective. So the overarching focus for WP and Up is actually supporting and promoting positive mental health within the WordPress community. We looked at what does that mean? What does supporting and promoting positive health mean within the community? And we quickly realized that there are some key elements to the community. Code, obviously, we want to be able to support people to write good quality code. If you're self-employed, you're running a business, and you're maybe not able to write a level of code that ensures you're producing a good product, then your business is potentially going to be impacted by that. So being able to offer support within writing your good code is something that is very relevant to this community. Business health, being able to support the community from their business perspective, so being able to provide mentorship and one-to-one support is again something that I feel very strongly about. There are obviously a lot of services and places out there that you can go to and provide these kinds of business support services, but the issue is that we are wanting to support individuals that are self-employed potentially or are trying to run a business. So the last thing we want to do is hit them with a big bill to be part of this. So setting this up as a charity and actually having the ability to support individuals with their business health is very, very important. Physical health is an obvious one in terms of the time that can be spent sat at a desk. I know I can certainly spend 10, maybe even 12 hours sometimes, which is incredibly unhealthy, at my desk working away, and it impacts my physical health. And obviously that impact on the physical health has a very direct impact on the mental health, which is why we have this kind of overarching focus on mental health.
That's absolutely fascinating. So what started out as a kind of, a meetup organisation is sort of transferred itself, changed over time, and now you're hoping that it's going to be a much greater thing. Are you intending to put sort of advice or forums or things like that, ways of communicating, or articles that are of interest to people with these 4 areas?
Yes, absolutely. We've got a really phenomenal team of trustees at the core of this at the moment, and there's been a really great team of what we're calling advisors supporting that board of trustees as well, and there's been such a positive response from the community every time we have this discussion. Every time we bring up the subject of this of mental health within the community, somebody else steps up and says, "Yeah, Dan, you know what? I want to be involved in some way. I want to actually support this in some way." So yes, there's lots of things that we're working through and wanting to bring to the community. At the moment, we're at this stage of the kind of the formal setting up of the charity itself. And developing all the stuff in the background, and actually developing a service and a product that can be brought to the community to support them.
That's so cool. How good is that? And that's really, really, because I mean, it's a topic which gets bandied around all the time, in Facebook groups and things. People, sometimes they feel confident enough to post a little post about how they're struggling and what have you, and then people make nice comments, and then that thread gets lost, and presumably not much more happens, but hopefully this will be a source. And it's fascinating just around the WordPress space. You're absolutely right. I sit in front of my computer for stupid amounts of time every day. And sometimes, like you say, you feel a little bit like you're not doing your body any good physically. Sometimes at the end of the day, you're just mentally drained, aren't you? And having somewhere to go and talk to, and if there's a crowd of people just talking about that stuff, I think that's brilliant. That's such a great idea. Thank you.
It's really kind of, I say, it's been this kind of evolution through the community. So I'm eternally grateful to the community for the support and the ability that I've had to be able to bring this and develop this. I mean, I've got to say, there's the co-organisers that I've got for the events. I mean, there's a team of 10 of us now in terms of organisers. I mean, I've got to say, there's Gary, Annabelle, Diane, Paul, Mike, Sam, Angie, Rich, Lorelei. I mean, they're all they in terms of they're just organisers. So they're organisers of events. I've just got to say a huge thank you to each and every one of them, because it really does allow us to bring these events to the community. Yeah, phenomenal.
Unfortunately, Dan, we're kind of out of time. It's sad. I could keep talking about this for ages, but yeah, thanks for sharing your story. First of all, about word camps and WordPress meetups and what have you, and then obviously this last little bit, which kind of feels like it could have been a podcast all by itself about the sort of mental health side. As we record, the WP and Up, which I should say is WP ANDUP, WPandup.org, is in its sort of holding pattern. When do you think you're going to have that done? Is it based upon your charitable status being accredited and what have you?
Yes, yeah. So we're aiming for the end of June at the moment. That's our kind of penciled in date, if you like.
Right.
We're a little dependent on the Charities Commission and various other bodies at the moment, so things are slightly outside of our control.
Yep.
But yes, that's the kind of targeted kind of June, July this year, or our aim.
Okay.
Our goals.
So if you've got anything in that area, if you want to reach out to Dan, do you want to just tell us where you can be found apart from on that URL?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if anybody wants to get in contact in any way, shape or form, my DMs on Twitter are open. You can pretty much find me anywhere /Dan Maby, and that's MABY. If you want to head over to the WPLDN website or our company site, blue37.com, you'll find plenty of contact details there. If you are listening to this and thinking, you know what, I quite fancy getting a meetup up and running, I'm more than happy to have a chat and support in any way I can. So please feel free to reach out.
Great. Great. You never know. By the end of this year, you might have another 4 under your belt, and then you'll be doing nothing but meetups. You'll have no time to do any work.
Yeah.
Well, thanks from all of us for people just like you who make it a much better experience. And I'll no doubt speak to you soon. Thanks, Dan.
Well, thank you very much. Take care.
And this week's ending fact is taken from cubicleninja.com, and they've got, oh gosh, it doesn't say the number. It's got mind-blowing web design facts, and I think there's 29 of these. But what's taken our fancy is number 19 to talk about, which is exit pop-ups actually work. Although, admittedly, it doesn't give us any actually statistics on this, but
I so want them not to work. I really wish they didn't work and would go away. Yeah, but apparently they do. And go on, tell us the statistics, or is there one?
No, there doesn't seem to be anything. I think they link to somewhere we've been before, which is usertesting.com. So you might want to follow that. But
I'm on that page at the minute, and I can't see anything which is actually, here's the study that we did, and here's the data. Nothing like that. No. It's just, no, basically.
You and I hate them, but it worked on me this week, which is why I featured this one, because I went to WP Ultimo site and I was interested in the product anyway, but I went to their exit and they offered me 15%, and that just did it. It made me turn around and buy it there and then.
The thing about pop-ups on exit intent that I dislike is they're not usually about giving you actual value in the real world, are they? They don't normally find themselves associated with, well, here's 20% off the cart or $10 off your next purchase. It's usually just before you go, would you like to stay in touch with us? Here's our form. And I'm just a little bit, I mean, I know it doesn't do anything to compel you to stay on the site. All it does is it draws your eye in. But I just wonder if, as time goes by, and this is more and more common, we'll just become weary of them and block them out in the same way that we all block out ads on Google's search engine listings. Yeah. To the point where they've done themselves out of a job.
Yeah, and you made a good point before we press record, and that was the fact that, it could be false. It looks like it's working, but like you were saying about me, I probably would have bought that anyway. I mean, my only counter argument was I might have just left the site and then forgotten about it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, it could be just the fact that it appears to be working, but actually there are only people who are going to sign up anyway.
Yep. It kind of fits into the same bracket as, these WooCommerce extensions and cart platforms who somehow they, you've kind of filled out your email field and never got through to it, and they've obviously socked that data into their database before you've submitted the form, and then you get an email saying there's something sitting in a cart. Do you want to deal with that? And he's like, no, I don't. No, I would have dealt with it if I'd wanted to. So I'm really cynical about these. I don't really like them. I wish that they weren't so prevalent. But I tell you what, if they work, and people don't grow frustrated with them, then so be it. I just find anything like that, any interruption marketing, I find a little bit annoying.
Yeah, my fear is the trust element with it. Even though it worked on me. It just that's that little thing like, oh, they did that to me, and
yeah. Actually, do you know what though? I'd far rather the exit intent than the timer. You've been on the site for 5 seconds. Let's put the exact same pop-up asking you to sign up for our newsletter. That one, I don't think that's got any place anywhere.
No.
But I bet it works. Bet it works.
Yeah. Let's put it out there that we hate them, and they probably just and see if someone can argue the value in them.
Yeah, okay.
Even though they work, I think they could be measuring the wrong things. It's the same with pop-ups, I think, in general, that you might get the numbers, but do you get the quality? Is it worth it in the end?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, there you go. Right. So we've solved nothing, but we've moaned about something, so I feel good.
Time to go.
Yeah. So let's say goodbye from the WP Builds podcast once again. Thanks for listening. Go over to wpbuilds.com/deals if you want to find out what we've got deals on at the moment. It doesn't change all that often, but it might have done. and /subscribe, where you can find all the multiple ways that you can keep in touch, which is a little bit like interruption marketing, only in an audio form. So I really am not not very. I'm a bit disingenuous, aren't I? It turns out. So I'll fade in the cheesy music and say goodbye from me, Nathan Wrigley,
and goodbye from me, David Walmsley.
Bye bye.
Bye.